It's been a while since I did a book video, but today I have a large stack of books with me, and today I'm going to be giving you my review of 10 of the most popular books recently. I'm notoriously a very slow reader, which means that I don't get through many books during the year, so that's why I'm ranking popular books, because usually I only read popular books. I don't have a developed enough book taste to go into like some super niche book areas. Some of the books have been amazing, and some of them have been terrible. In fact, the only book I've ever rated 1 star is in this stack. So I have my Goodreads open on my computer. Little sneak peek, I'm currently filming a trying to have less than an hour of screen time every day for a week video. That'll go up a week from today. That's why I don't have my phone open with Goodreads. I'm cheating and using my computer. But that's because I honestly don't remember what I ranked all these books. Alright, so the first book that I'm starting off with is Daisy Jones and the Six. This one was really popular this year because the new Amazon Prime series came out, which I watched, and it was amazing. By the way, I'm not gonna include spoilers in this because I figured this would be a good guide to figure out which books to read and which not to read, from my opinion. If you haven't heard all of the stuff online about it, it's basically an interview style book about a band from the 70s and just how they become a band, and then what happens to them after a few years of being together. They partner with this girl named Daisy Jones, who's an up-and-coming singer, and then it kind of skyrockets them to fame. I rated this book a 4 stars. I just thought it was really different and creative. It was a super quick read. I read it really fast because since it's interview style, it's very not a lot of descriptions, just dialogue that you're reading. I also thought the plot was really interesting. There's just always all this drama happening with the band, and it was just really cool to see the insider information of the lifestyle of being a band in the 70s. I would recommend reading it before watching the series if you haven't yet, but I will say I think I liked the series better than the book. I think it was because they're talking about all these songs in the book that they're writing, and it's so much easier to get into it if you can hear the songs. Book number 2 is A Court of Thorns and Roses. I was a huge fantasy book person growing up, especially in middle school. I loved reading fantasy books. I even wrote a fantasy book because in 7th grade we had to do NaNoWriMo, which is November National Novel Writing Month. Also, you can't see the bottom of my bookshelf, but I have all of the Warriors books. I was definitely a Warriors Cats person. I did not plan out this video. I don't know why I'm exposing myself. Moral of the story, I hadn't read a fantasy book in a while. I heard that these books were really popular, and I had them on my Goodreads list for a really long time. And I finally got this book for Christmas 2 years ago. My rating is different than from what I remember. Okay, so the premise of this book is, this was good. So there's this girl named, I think her name is pronounced Feyre, and she's a human. She ends up doing something that connects her to the magical world, and she gets captured by this beast thing, and gets taken to this big house way off in the magical land. So basically there's this evil person that's trying to take over the fairy world. It sounds funny saying it out loud. She finds out that she's kind of the only person that can help stop the evil magic. I really liked this book. Apparently I rated it a 3 stars, but I would read it again, honestly. I also just love the concept of a fantasy series because it's more addictive, I guess. This one I rated 3 stars. I kind of remember now. I was I didn't love it, but it left me at a part where I know it's gonna get better, so I want to keep reading. So I immediately went to the bookstore and bought the second one, also because this cover is so pretty. I love this color so much. And this book was 630 pages long, but I think I read this one in literally less than a week, which is super fast for me. I rated this one 4 stars because it was a lot better. And then I think I started the third one, but haven't finished that yet because it was another 600 page long book, and I was I I can commit to this again. Next up is It Ends With Us. This is like the most popular book of the past like 2 years. We went on a cruise in November. I'm not even kidding. Everybody at the pool on the cruise was reading a Colleen Hoover book. It wasn't even funny. Like, you know, when you watch a movie and like somebody becomes famous and then they're like walking around and they see everybody like reading their book or like listening to their music, that's literally what it was. Like, everybody was reading a Colleen Hoover book. I know that this book became very controversial. I know it was like super popular at first and then all these like controversies started coming up. I really liked this book. I thought it was really like a really good easy read, but I also thought it like told a good story, because a lot of times romance books that are like this are just like, by the end of it you forget the whole story. Also the side story with Atlas is like very interesting, because the letters that are interspersed in between the chapters kind of like tell more of a second plot line. And I rated it 5 stars. If you haven't read this book, the premise is basically this girl named Lily. She's opening her own business. There's kind of a love triangle story going on with the person that she meets in current time versus this like childhood friend that she's had. And then there's kind of like a twist that honestly like I did not see coming. But overall, I would say it's worth reading. While we're on the Colleen Hoover track, I read Verity last summer, and this one is like one of her only thrillers. It's about this writer, and she ends up getting a job to like finish this novel series written by this lady that's like super injured, and she's basically like confined to her room, not able to finish her books even though she had like a contract. So this girl moves into the lake house that's owned by this lady and her husband to like go through her files and finish writing the book. She finds this manuscript written by the author that like starts revealing all these secrets, and it's actually really creepy. Like, I rated this book 4 stars. I didn't love the ending. Like, I don't want to give any spoilers, but like the ending was kind of left a little bit too open to interpretation. I feel like it would have been more memorable if I had gotten like closure on what was happening. Next up is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. First off, can we appreciate like how amazing this typography is and just the cover? It's very different. Like, make more covers unique like this. We do not need any more of these. This is another fantasy book. It's about this girl named Addie LaRue, obviously. She like sells her soul because she wants to be immortal. It shows her through like a span of 400 years. But whenever she meets anybody, they don't remember her as soon as like they walk away from her. She basically like goes on and lives her life and like kind of like figures out how to get by with people not remembering her. Finally, I think it's in like the present day, she meets this person that finally remembers her. Like, it's the first person in like 400 years that remembers her. So then that kind of sets off a story of them trying to figure out like why they can remember each other, and it turns out this guy also like has some sort of like magical secret. I really liked this book at the beginning. I rated it 3 stars. Really liked the premise, and I feel like I could have liked it if it was like done differently. I feel like such a book critic, like why am I so critical about this? One of the problems is that it kept jumping back and forth between different timelines. So like between like the 1700s to like the 2010s or something like that. And I don't know if it's just like an attention span problem for me, but as soon as it jumps to back to the old time period, I like lost interest, and then I would like stop reading, so then it took me forever to read. I don't fully remember the details because I think it's been like 3 years since I read that book, but there's something near the end with like the love interests that I wish the author had just like picked a side and gone with it, instead of like leaving it so back and forth the entire time. Like, I totally would have loved the book more if it was like centered around the other person more. I'm like barely vaguely remembering this at all, but I think that's what I felt after I read it. I would recommend reading it because I think a lot of people really liked it, and it might be for you. Next up, we have The Silent Patient. This one I'd been so excited to read for like so long. I read this, I think last year or 2 years ago. And I read this in 1 day, which is crazy for me. Like, I never read a book in 1 day. At the time I was reading this, my average amount of time reading a book would be like a month. I also love books that have like chapters that are only like 3 or 4 pages. I don't know why, because I feel like the authors that do that are really good at like leaving cliffhangers at the end of each chapter. This is my second favorite book of all time, I think. Well, no, The Hunger Games. This is like my top 5. So the premise is basically there's this psychotherapist. He's a psychotherapist and he gets assigned this patient that hasn't talked in like a really long time. He basically has to like figure out what happened to her. And so the book is basically about like him slowly figuring out like more details about her life. But the plot twist at the end is like crazy. Like, it's literally like the best plot twist I've ever read. I wish I could experience that again. My mind was blown. I think my brother, he read the book and he said that he saw the plot twist coming, and I was like, okay. Maybe if you're like super into thrillers, you already like know the formulas and stuff. But I hadn't really read many thrillers before this, so I was just like totally caught off guard. But yeah, I highly recommend reading this one. Next up we have Crying in H-Mart by Michelle Zauner. Another amazing cover. Like, this book, if you didn't know, is written by the lead singer of the band Japanese Breakfast, which I think it's amazing when people like that write books, because she's such a good songwriter, and you can like see it in her book. Like, you can see kind of like the style carry through. I love books that are more poetic like this. This book is about, it's an autobiography about Michelle Zauner. Her mom ends up getting cancer, and it's just kind of like about remembering her childhood and reconciling with knowing what's about to come, and like that everything's gonna change. There's a really good, I remember there's like a really good quote. It's like at the end, she compares her life to like kimchi or something like that. It's like one of the best passages I've ever read in a book. Next up is Where The Crawdads Sing. This one's been popular for a while now. I read this in 2020, and it's like my favorite. This is my favorite book ever. I love this book so much. I wish I could go back to 2020, you know, not go back to COVID, but like go back to when I was just sitting on the porch without any school to do, reading this book. It also takes place in North Carolina, which is where I live, so I guess I connected with it more too. Also, the cover is really pretty. I love this picture. So the book is about this girl named Kaya who lives in like the swamps in North Carolina in the 60s, and she's known as the swamp girl or the marsh girl. She becomes an orphan, or she's like living alone. She's like really isolated from society, and like nobody really talks to her, and she kind of has to like figure out how to live on her own. And it's also partly a mystery because this murder happens, and suspiciously Kaya like has a connection with the person that was killed, even though she's like really isolated. And she ends up meeting these two guys like in her later like teenage or early adult years. One of the guys is the guy that's like the murdered person, and oh man, I just want to read this book again. It's so good. The movie was amazing too. I was like super excited for that to come out, and it did not disappoint. It was like really accurate to how I pictured the book. Obviously like Taylor Swift on the soundtrack singing a song about North Carolina, that was amazing. The best part about this book is the plot twist at the end. I know a few people that like it took them a while to get into, like a few of my friends actually. They tried to read it first and they couldn't get into it, and then they read it again and really liked it. So I would say like just get through the beginning, because it's really good. It's really good. Second to last book is Beach Read. We're gonna do a full 180 from my favorite book ever to my least favorite book ever. I just finished this book like a week ago. I've been hearing about this forever, this year at least, and I was really excited to read it because I thought it would be good. And I love books that are like super quick reads, because I bought this when I went on vacation because I thought it would just be like a lighthearted read, which it was. A little bit too lighthearted. The plot of this book is, first off, their names are like what throws me off at the beginning. January and Augustus are their names. And they're both like really best-selling authors. So January writes like really lighthearted romance books like these, and then Augustus writes really dark books. And they were like rivals in college. January's dad dies, so she goes to live at his lake house, and apparently like her college rival now is neighbors with her dad's lake house. So she runs into him, and then they're both kind of in like a writing slump, so they decide that it would be fun to like write each other's genres and like to like switch things up, I guess. So in the meantime, like she teaches him how to write a romance book, and then he teaches her how to write like a dark novel. That premise is interesting to me. Like I was really excited to read it because I thought that was like, I really liked like the switcheroo theme. It was really like surface level. Like she was teaching him how to like write romance novels. And so she was taking him to all these places like a carnival and like a hot air balloon ride. And I just feel like it could have been more like not stereotypical. Like if she's such a good romance writer, she shouldn't like be looking in like the stereotypical places, you know? To top all that off, her super dark, like twisted family drama that she starts writing is about a family of clowns at the circus, and I just like couldn't get behind that. I don't know. At that point I was like, what am I reading? Because I don't know. And then like the end isn't even that good. I don't recommend reading this book unless you want just something really lighthearted. My mom rated it 5 stars. I wish I had liked it because I was really excited about it. Alright, last up, this book is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I think this won Best Book of the Year or something like that. I loved this book. First off, the cover is really different. I don't know how I feel. Like, no, I like totally get what they were doing with it. It's not quite my style, but I totally get what they were doing with it. So this book is about these students that I think it takes place in like the 90s, or yeah, 90s. This girl goes to Harvard, and then there's this other guy, I forget where he goes. They're kind of like childhood best friends. They're both video game programmers and video game designers. They decide to work together and create their own video game. I'm not like a video game person, and I'm also not like anti-video games. You don't have to be into video games at all to like this book. They create this video game and it becomes like a huge success, and they're able to like start a company. They have enough money to like buy offices, and the story spans from like 30 years, and it shows like their childhood and then like current day as like 30-year-olds, I guess. And the last line of like the description says, yes, it's a love story, but not one you have read before. And it's interesting because they never like end up together or anything, which that's not a spoiler because it literally says 2 friends often in love but never lovers. They're just like really good business partners, and it shows that like there's like different kinds of friendships. And this book is also just really poetic, kind of like the Crying in H-Mart book. There's just a lot of paragraphs and lines that are just really like deep to think about. And I think what makes this book good is that like it's just literally a story that you've never heard before. Like, when have you ever read a book about video game designers? I rated it 5 stars and I highly recommend. It was just like refreshing. Like I needed something new. I want to find more books like this. Speaking of, if you have any book recommendations, please comment them below, because I'm finally back into reading after doing my like little screen time detox. I've been reading a lot this week, and I'm looking for some more books that are like interesting. Let me know your opinions on any of these books that I talked about, because I want to know if anybody thought the same thing as me as like some of these books. So yeah, I'll see you guys next week with a brand new video. I upload every Wednesday, but until then you can go watch another one of my book videos. I did like a midway through the year book review video last summer. Also, I have a weekly podcast with ENZO Antonio called Telepathy, and we have new episodes every Tuesday, so go check that out. The links will be in the description to go listen to our most recent episode. This week's is about travel horror stories, because we always travel together and each trip we go on has something crazy happen. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next Wednesday with a brand new video. Bye guys!